What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Canadian Football Fanatics. On today's episode, I have a special guest joining me. Folks, we are already at episode 30 of the podcast already. Number 2 of the rebrand, obviously, under the Canadian Football Fanatics, but 30 podcast episodes altogether. It's been flying by. Been having a fun on each and every episode, learning about different people's journeys has been a lot of fun. Excited for today's guest. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think people that are tuning in will enjoy today's episode. But before we get to that, we are officially on Instagram, folks. So go follow us, please. Get the follow count up at Canadian Football Fanatics, no spaces on Instagram. I think we'll be able to do a lot of fun things with that as well. Hopefully get into the kind of YouTube short and then be able to kind of introduce ourselves into the Instagram reel space as well. So go follow us over on Instagram at the Canadian Football Fanatics over on Instagram. And before we get going, as always, please be sure if you guys are enjoying all the content here, the rebrand and all that stuff on the podcast, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow, rate, review over on the Apple Podcast channels, all that good stuff. So without further ado, I will bring in episode 30 guest, BCFC CJFL legend with the Langley Rams. He started at the University of Manitoba, CFL defensive back for a few years, and now Saskatchewan Roughriders coach, Jordan Linnen. Jordan, thank you for joining me. How are you doing tonight?
Good, man. How are you doing? Thank you for having me on.
I'm doing very well, very well. Like I was mentioning off camera, been familiar with yourself for quite some time growing up in Nanaimo, becoming very familiar with the junior football game because of, luckily for myself, having a very competitive team in Nanaimo, just being that much more, I guess, enticed to go watch football games when you're kind of competing every year for championships and that sort of thing. So I remember a scrappy number 21 DB for Langley Rams. Kind of, I remember one night specifically that I'm definitely interested to hear your kind of side of things, and we'll get into that. But before we do, Jordan, if you don't mind, maybe introducing yourself a little bit to the podcast listeners tonight, maybe telling them about where you grew up, where you played, I guess, your high school kind of football, and kind of maybe a little bit about yourself, anything that comes to mind.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the introduction, and definitely gonna have some good stories to get into. But BC boy, born and raised. Grew up here in Surrey. Went to school at Frankhurt Secondary. Played my minor football for North Surrey Minor. Kind of came up through the ranks. Went on to play university football at University of Acadia before returning back home to BC to play for at the time, Big Kuna Rams, which then became the Langley Rams. Played 4 years or 3 years there, and then left to play at the University of Manitoba before heading on to play some pro ball between the BC Lions and the Montreal Alouettes. But yeah, as far as playing and kind of growing up here, been in BC majority of my life, moved around a bunch, but BC's always been home. Spent some time down south, lived in California for a number of years, but I always claim Vancouver or Surrey more specifically as home, and proud to be from here, proud to be able to come back and give back to this community as much as I can.
Awesome. So you mentioned about yourself going to Frankhurt, which I believe is a AA school here in the province of British Columbia.
Yep.
I also went to a AA school, played 4 years of high school football. So I'm curious, Jordan, kind of maybe if you could maybe fill us in about your high school experience. I always kind of jokingly, which I shouldn't, but my high school experience kind of wasn't the greatest in terms of, people really caring or kind of coming out to watch and stuff like that. Just kind of, the nature of living out in Canada. But I feel like you have maybe a different, kind of side of things because of your involvement with the youth now and kind of the 7-on-7 kind of these changes and kind of these kids really don't have an off season. They're able to work on their skills. And now you're seeing, I think football starting to be really taken seriously in the province of BC and the country of Canada. So first, I guess, kind of how was your experience in playing football in British Columbia and kind of the atmosphere and all that sort of things?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was fortunate to be, a part of a program that was on the rise. I think, we always joked as we came to Frankhurt from all different areas of Vancouver or the Lower Mainland, more specifically Surrey, to one school because we wanted to try and build a program that could, be competitive at a provincial level, but also be able to try and earn a provincial championship. So when we came to Frankfurt, it was a little AA school, like you mentioned, in the heart of Newton. If you know Surrey, it's not the greatest area, but it was a program that was, in its infancy. I don't think it was only around for, at the time, 6 years. And at that point, when we all decided to come there, most of us playing community football together, we felt like it was a necessary, evil, I guess we call it that, to try and turn the program into a perennial powerhouse if we could. So when we came in, it wasn't a school that was known for football, obviously, like I said, the program being fairly young, and also the location. It wasn't, the greatest area. So people were like, organized sports in good old Surrey don't necessarily have the, championship caliber type teams. But, in my 2 years at the varsity level, really my 3, because I played varsity from grade 10 on, actually even played a little bit in grade 9. Our varsity program was the number one, at various points throughout the season, was the number 1 ranked team in the province. So we competed with the Lord Tweedsmuirs of the world, the Terry Foxes of the world. At that time, Vancouver College wasn't who they are now, but some of those programs, especially at the AA level, the cool, unique part was that we got to play AAA JV. So when we were in JV, we got to play the Holy Crosses of the world. We got to play some of those bigger programs, Centennials and the things like that. But to answer your question about kind of what the vibe was around the programs or around the football in the community, it wasn't as big as it is now. I think there is a lot more kids, playing football, a lot more kids that are intrigued by the opportunity to be on a team, and even just learn the game of football itself. So, I think back then, we would be happy to have 150, 200 fans. Now these kids at certain, games and certain rivalries, there's, a couple thousand. So it's good to see that, football in the province is healthy and is growing, and to touch on the thing you said, coming back now, much older and being a coach at a different level. I just want to continue to give back and nurture, football in this community. So the 7-on-7 aspect and what we're trying to do there is a lot, to do with that. And we're just continuing trying to build skills and develop the football in our community, and hopefully in BC as a province and Canada as a whole. We want to continue to push the culture and continue to grow the game. But it's not the easiest thing in the world, but we're trying, and I think we're starting to get a little bit of headway there and being able to do that.
Yeah, man. And you talked about kind of the rivalry games building and stuff like that. Now, I think part of the game changing and evolving kind of has stuff to do with guys like you creating 7-on-7 stuff, but then also guys like Malcolm and stuff like that creating Showtime Digital, and these guys showing up with kind of platforms and stuff like that, and putting these guys skills and stuff out there for other people to see and kind of really absorb that on a whole nother scale, I guess, which kind of it's regular down south, but hopefully now we're kind of starting to get it more and more regular up here. But how have you kind of seen the game in that aspect kind of change and evolve firsthand?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing, Malcolm, shout out to Showtime Digital. But I think, one thing we tell our guys, especially when we're down south playing, or even just when I'm talking to coaches that I know that coach at various places down south, I think the biggest, difference or disparity between Canadian kids and the opportunities that they get to play at the highest level is literally that opportunity and exposure. I don't think that there's as many opportunities and exposure for Canadian kids stateside. So we try to facilitate that the best we can. I think the other part of that is, the infrastructure. I think in the US, there's a lot of support in the sense that, they've got tons of facilities and tons of turf fields and tons of, money being poured into the sport and development of the sport at the grassroots level. So, as far as up here, what we're trying to build, that's something that, we do lack a little bit. I think you're starting to see a shift in terms of, Football Canada and the different provincial bodies starting to allocate or pour more resources into football. But we're not there yet. And I think that's, as that starts to grow, it'll get better for our players as far as the opportunities that they get to, to compete and go down stateside. But right now, I think the biggest thing that we have is just trying to create these opportunities for these youth and trying to give them the exposure to what it is to compete at the highest levels. I mean, you're going to go against the kids that are going to your favorite universities. You're going to compete against guys that may be playing on Sundays one day. So that's the one thing, for us in our program specifically, we try to really facilitate. But also more importantly, as a guy from BC, I know what kind of talent has come through this province in my time in high school and even, like beyond that after me. So, just trying to continue to create opportunities for these kids to showcase their ability on whatever platforms are necessary, whether that's social media, whether that's, the different tournaments, whether that's even just taking them down there for camps in the US. We're trying to help facilitate as many of those opportunities as possible.
Well said, well said. So back to you, Jordan. You finish up your high school career at Frankfurt, and then as you mentioned, you commit to the University of Acadia, if I'm not mistaken. Take us through that decision. Was there some other schools, being a BC boy, maybe staying in the Canada West, was that ever an option, going all the way out to, Acadia, out on the other side of the country? Obviously a big decision for a young man at the time. So take us through a little bit of that decision, how you got to Acadia, and if there was kind of, other universities in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, for me at that time, I wasn't Acadia, if I'm being honest, wasn't even really on my radar. I had went through my recruiting process, had been talking to a few schools at that time, and kind of narrowed down my recruiting to a few schools. I've been talking to a few Division II schools stateside, and also had been talking to some Can West schools. At the time, the school that I was probably talking the most to was Calgary. At the time, Blake Nill, who's the head coach at UBC now, was the head coach there. He was just incoming, I guess, from his time at St. Mary's prior to that. So we had had lengthy conversations, and I was looking to potentially join that team and in the Can West, and then also had been talking to Manitoba, Coach Dobie, and me have a great long-standing relationship. Obviously, years and years later, it all came together, and I was able to take my myself to the University of Manitoba. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, I talked to a few OUA schools. More specifically, at the time, I was talking to York, and then also talking to Windsor. So for me, those schools were schools that were kind of high on me. Briefly talked to Laurier, nothing really came of it. But at the time, I probably had, when it was all said and done, about 8 opportunities, scholarship opportunities across the country to stay in Canada, whether that was OUA, RSEQ, or Can West. Again, had no idea about Acadia, didn't know where it was or anything like that, didn't take any visits like I did some of the other schools. So in my recruiting process, I had kind of already narrowed it down and was like, all right, well, I'm probably just going to, take myself to a Division II school down south and just try and compete. But I somehow got in contact with Coach Cummings. Jeff Cummings was the head coach at Acadia, still to present day. And it just seemed like a natural fit. We had a great relationship, a great rapport. I remember him calling me my senior year kind of regularly. And I talked to him while I was in class. Like, I'd leave class and take a phone call in the hallway. So it just became a very natural fit. And it wasn't really like even me being sold on the school. It was more me being sold on the opportunity to come in and compete on offense or defense. And then also the other aspect of it being like the coaches and then the recruiting class. The recruiting class was predominantly from California. Ironically enough, a lot of guys out of junior college, a lot of guys that were transferring from bigger programs or dropping back, I guess, from bigger programs. So that incoming class in the 2008, 2009 year was a lot of California guys. So naturally there was a lot of rapport and chemistry there with those guys. And it just felt like a good fit. So I took a chance, kind of sight unseen. I didn't actually get a chance to, visit the university. I remember going to an information session. One of the coaches, the linebacker coach at the time, a guy named Stephen Farrell, who passed not too long ago. He was one of the recruiting coordinators, I guess, and he had took me out to one of the school, university information sessions that happened in downtown Vancouver. So I went to it, sat there with my mom, and it was like a school. It was more academic than it was athletic. They weren't selling us on anything academic. On anything athletic. It was more about, hey, this is how many alumni we have. This is where the university is located. This is what they offer academically. And I was like, okay. So again, I kind of just took a shot in the dark, and I went out there, and honestly, I enjoyed my time. I didn't have anything bad to say about my time at Acadia. I chose to leave for personal reasons. It had nothing to do with school, had nothing to do with the university itself. I think the university is a great institution. I think it's a great location. It's a cool vibe. Definitely different than the big city. So that was a part of it. But other than that, man, I had nothing bad to say about my experience at Acadia.
Yeah, so 08, 09, I believe that the 1 year you stayed there, and then you return back home for the it's funny that I was, I guess, a little too young. I don't remember the Langley Rams being the Kahuna Rams, but you return home to play for the Rams. What kind of went into that decision? Was there any contact prior to going to Acadia and all those other schools? Were there some junior schools that maybe you had been in contact with prior to leaving, and then kind of maybe rekindling that connection with, your your hometown team there?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of similar situation to kind of how I chose to play at Acadia. It was one of those conversations. I was coming home for the summer break. Like when I left Acadia, I left everything there. There was no desire to come home and bring everything back and maybe look at other schools or decide to transfer or anything like that. It was just hey, all right, we're home from May, get ready to go back in August. It's all good. But I landed, I remember it was like the first week of May, and a bunch of my like friends I had played either high school football with or played against in community or even played against in high school were like, hey man, like the Rams are having this like spring camp here. And it's just like a 3-day thing. Like if you want to come, like we'd love to have you come out, like come compete with the boys type thing. And I was like, bro, like I didn't even know when this was going on or anything. I haven't registered, and it's literally like in 2 days. But they made some calls. They talked to a couple different people, and I was able to go to the little spring camp that they had. So I pulled up to spring camp and just competed and had fun doing it. And it was kind of one of those things that it was no pressure, no stress. I just kind of had fun with the boys and got to play with some of my old teammates, and it was cool. The next weekend, the VI Raiders ended up having their spring camp. And so I had a friend that her family was a part of that organization and helping kind of like the board. And so they, invited me to come and check it out. And I was like, well, why not? I had fun the previous weekend. Let me just go over to Nanaimo. I haven't really been in Nanaimo, so let me go check it out. And at that time, Andrew was there, Harris, everyone knows who that is, and had the opportunity to go over there and compete for 3 days as well. So long story short, those two camps kind of made it an interesting dynamic for me. Like, okay, well, I can play junior and be back in my home province and be back, close to home and able to compete with my friends against some of the guys I competed against growing up. And it was a cool opportunity, but I hadn't given it much more thought than that. So, fast forward to, the start of the season, coach, at the time, Coach Bushler, who was the head coach of the Rams, and then also Coach Snoop, who was the head coach of the Raiders at the time, were kind of just, I guess, bidding to try and get me over to their respective programs. But I had both told both programs that I still had the intention of returning to Acadia. And, as we got closer to training camp, I was like, you know what? I'm doing some family stuff. My parents were going through some things. So I decided that, a chance to play at home for even just a year would be a cool and unique opportunity. I called Coach Cummings. I explained the situation. I said, hey, like, this isn't I don't want to be at Acadia. This isn't anything like that. It's just a situation that feels right, given the timeline of what's going on with me at home, and also just being able to come back home for a short period of time. So we agreed to 1 year. I would play 1 year, and I would go back to Acadia and continue to be the guy that they needed me to be for that program. Obviously, that didn't happen. I ended up staying and playing out my junior eligibility for various amount of reasons, but. When it all came down to it, I think Langley, or at the time Big Kahuna, we were based out of South Surrey. It was an opportunity to play with some guys that I, grew up respecting and trusted and believed in, and also some guys that I grew up just competing with in every aspect of football. So it was a cool opportunity, man. And I don't regret it for a second. I think it helped me, mature, helped me grow as a player, and also it was a cool opportunity to compete here in BC with some of the best players that ever come out of BC.
Yeah, super cool hearing how you ended up in Langley. Before we get into 2012 specifically, I guess maybe kind of what makes your time at Langley, what makes that organization so special?
Honestly, I think at that time, especially that 2009 to 2012 era, it was just the competition level, man. I think we had players much like VI, much like some of the bigger, better programs in the CJFL. We recruit nationally, or they recruited nationally, and we had players from Toronto, we had players from Calgary, we had players from BC, we had players from all over the country, and they were all the arguably the best players at their respective positions. So for us, and at that time for me, it was like, I want to be amongst the best. I want to be around a bunch of dudes that are just hungry to make it out. Much like I'm sure junior at the time wasn't a place where, I guess I don't want to try to take a shot at what junior is now, but at that time it was more of a dog eat dog world. It was a place where guys that couldn't make it in school, or guys that had, difficulties in life situations that prevented them from playing at the university level, came to play. And everyone had the same mentality. I want to go pro, and I'm going to do everything I can to go pro. So it made it a really competitive environment internally in our organization, but also outside of it, playing the VIs, playing the Victoria Rebels, playing the different organizations around the BCFC. So for me, it was a challenge, but an opportunity. I was a 19-year-old kid that wanted to prove that I deserved to be amongst the best players in the province or in the country. And the best way to do that was to get on the same field as those guys. So, and that's not to say that there isn't that at the U Sport or the CIS level. At the time, it was a lot of that too. But I think at that time specifically, the BCFC had some of the best players bar none across the country. So that's why I did it. And I think that's what made Langley special is organizationally, Big Huna, the Rams, and like the two, Big Huna being the sports company that, financially backed the organization, and then also the organization as a whole provided a lot of supports and resources for the players, man. I came into a program where like we had the newest of everything. We walked in and we had cleats and we had new jerseys and we had the cool two-tone helmets and all that stuff. And so there was a lot that kind of made Langley feel almost like a professional team, you know what I mean? And that's why I enjoyed my time there. And that's why I never left. Obviously I had opportunities to leave, and I just, I felt like I had built a good, rapport with the staff and the organization as a whole. I was considered a leader in that program. And so I wanted to stay and be there for as long as I could.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, no slight at the newer generation of the BCFC, like you said, I was a part of the BCFC from 17 to 2019. So I think I was maybe on the kind of the cusp of some of those guys that were trying to get pro still. But I think that's a big if you know kind of about some of those guys back in the I'd say kind of early 2010s to 2013. So a lot of those teams, a lot of those guys, professional quality players, and kind of today's generation. I think it's just kind of comes with social media and stuff like that, but they're friends on and off the field, and kind of I feel like back in the day you didn't worry about kind of catching a body or getting your body on kind of the wrong end of the side of things, and kind of being able to show them on film, whatever it may be. So I guess kind of getting into what I wanted to talk about more specifically, which was jokingly probably one of the most saddest days of my Raider fandom. I remember the day in 2012. A Langley Rams team coming into Cali. I don't think I previously saw a Raiders team lost in person. Some of those guys I think I look up to so much of kind of, some of your former teammates. So, end up going to the University of Manitoba with, Yancey and Apperley, some of those guys, Sawyer and Dustin Peterson as well, being a NDSS alumni as well. Kind of take us through some of those wars and, for a few years, right, being able to be motivated by some of those losses that VI was able to have over you guys in 2009 to 2011, and then finally being able to kind of stick it to us and hoist the Cullen Cup in Cali, a miserable raining day. I'll forever remember that day of kind of sticking around Cali after. Remember not kind of seeing the boys take off their uniforms or anything like that. Like I said, from my end of things, it was definitely a sad day, but respecting kind of the rivalry that was built there, and kind of some of I believe it was like Nick Downey and Malcolm Williams, some of those guys that were some pretty bad boys. Talk about some of those rivalries, some of those wars that kind of eventually built into what some of those guys became your brothers.
Yeah, man. I think when I look back when I'm old and gray and probably in a retirement home somewhere, like I'm going to remember those years, man. I think those years were pivotal in my football career. They made me a better player, but more importantly, made me a better person. But I think those wars were definitely exactly that. They were wars. I'll never forget, like, we couldn't win at Caledonia. We would go into Caledonia. It was a formidable place. We knew when you pulled up, like, hey, it's going to be 60 minutes plus all hell breaking loose. And at the end of the day, like, you want to be on the receiving end of that and not be the one that's sitting there, just watching it happen. And you want to be able to go and hoist that Cullen Cup, because we knew, especially in the years prior, everything ran through Caledonia. You knew that. You knew if you couldn't beat VI in the regular season, you're going to have to go to Nanaimo and win in the playoffs to get to a national semifinal or a national final. So, for us in that 2012 season, it was like I'll never forget. We lost in 2011. I remember sitting there and just being like, I don't ever want to feel this shit again. And I knew the guys that I was with, Nick Felicella's, Carlos Graziano's, Ari Nakagawa's, like our entire defensive group, our entire leadership group. Like you said, Malcolm Williams was on that team. Nick Downey was one of my best friends to this day still, was on that team. We had guys that from that 09 to that 12 year really knew what that game meant. no matter when it was, whether it was the first game of the year, whether it was the second time that we ran it back in the season, or it was the playoff game, we knew that that game was going to be where we were judged on and what we were basing our season off of. And so when the 2011 season ended, it was almost like an instantaneous, like, all right, fuck it, January 1, we're back to work. And it wasn't a, hey, like, this is optional. It's like, if we're coming back for 2012 and the collective group is coming back, we're going to go as hard as we can to bring a national championship home. And it doesn't matter where we have to play. It doesn't matter if we're the 1 seed or if we're the getting in at number 4. We're coming home with the national championship. It made it a little bit more special knowing that that year the BCFC was going to host a national final. So we were just doing everything we could to get ready for that. And to the point you made, Nanaimo at that time, they couldn't be beat. I probably would have never said that to you then. But at this time, looking back at it, they were probably one of the best programs in the CJFL's history. And it's not just, earmarked by the championships. It's earmarked by the talent. It's earmarked by the guys that came there from all over the country to play for those guys. The Jordan Yances of the world, the Tremaine Apperleys, the Andrew Smiths, the, Curtis Vizas, like the list goes on and on and on. And for me as a player, more specifically as a DB, I love playing against them. I knew that at the end of the day, I don't know what receiver I'm going to get, but I know I'm going to get their best every single play. I competed, me and Robin Medeiros had wars. Me and Andrew Smith had wars. Me and Dustin Peterson, Petey. And it's funny because Petey graduated and grew up the latter part of his high school years in Nanaimo, but he grew up playing in Surrey with me prior to that. So I had long-lasting relationships with guys like that, but also just understanding that, like, all the guys that came through Nanaimo had one track mind. It was winning a national championship or that team wasn't good enough. And for us, it was the same mentality, but we just never got over the hump. So when we had the chance to do it in 2012, it was like, okay, no matter which way this goes, and we were having a great year too. Like, we had a great regular season, all those things. I think we finished second or whatever it was. We just knew when it came down to it, when the game was on the line, we were going to have to go through Nanaimo to get to a national final. And so, that game, like you said, it was miserable. But at the end of the day, like, the mentality for our guys was like, if we're in it, we win it. And that's what it was. So, we hung around in that game, and it was back and forth. I think both offenses struggled. But at the same time, like, both programs had great running backs. Both programs had big old linemen. So it was one of those things, like, as a DB, as a defensive player, like, you had to get in the mix. And I welcomed it. We had guys like Adam Konar. We had guys like Ari Nakagawa. We had guys like Joe Patko. Like, we had names, but also just dogs at every position that wanted to get to a national championship. And for us, thankfully, I was glad I didn't end my junior career with 3 consecutive eliminations to the VI Raiders. But yeah, it was one of those moments of vindication for us as a program and for me as a person. Like, hey, man, like, I know what it means to beat that program, and I know even more what it means to beat them in Caledonia Park. You know what I mean? Not to let them have the chance to fire the cannons and do all that shit. So for me, it was a great opportunity, man. And honestly, like, I'll never forget those wars. Like I said, I can name receivers on receivers. I can name running backs that came through there that, I just remember and have a ton of admiration and respect for. So yeah, man, some definitely good times.
I was thankful enough to be kind of, I would say maybe, I guess, like part-time ball boy. So I got to kind of be on the sidelines and kind of, behind the ropes, if you will. I definitely remember kind of a, especially, with the receivers and stuff like that, but a talkative, 21 on Langley and kind of with some of those Langley or VI receivers and stuff like that. That day I remember so specifically was because, I just remember always going to Cali and probably, VI was probably bound to put up, obviously when you saw Langley, it was probably going to be more of a lower scoring, tighter game, right? But going to Cali back in the day, man, you probably, it was like clockwork. You're probably going to see, 45, 50 on a bad day, right? Yancey and some of those boys, Michael Schaefer, Whitman Tamuziak, right? A lot of those guys that that you ended up going to university with. Can you talk a little bit about that specific kind of, yourself kind of being, a little bit of a chattier player, those guys kind of not really backing down as well. And you guys, kind of, people say iron sharpens iron all the time, right? That kind of, that phrase gets thrown around a lot. But the thing that I kind of really respected as well is, like, the thing that we see today, right, is now everyone's kind of buddy and they don't really want to compete 100% against their buddy, right? I think the thing that I really respected about that rivalry is you guys wanted to bust each other on every play, but had that respect of one another that, you know, there wasn't there wasn't dirty hits, there wasn't dirty shots. You wouldn't do a guy wrong, right? You just wanted to get him on that given play, and there was respect given. So could you maybe kind of talk a little bit about that rivalry, but not really crossing that line and respecting each other, kind of, and how that was built?
Yeah, man, I think you hit it nail on the head. I think, in this day and age, the willingness to compete isn't the same. The willingness to really lay it all on the line isn't always there. In those times, man, and with those teams, more specifically the rivalry between Langley and VI, it wasn't. You knew what you were getting into. You knew we used to always have a saying in Langley, like, close the gate. And it means like once you close the gate, it's whatever happens type of thing. And it was one of those things that, like, we knew from the minute that we stepped on the field at Caledonia for warmups to the minute that they did the introductions and they come out to the Raider anthem, when they start firing the cannons and all of that stuff, like, we knew what it was. We knew that there wasn't going to be a easy way out. So for us, it was about, like, and especially more specifically on the defensive side, obviously being a defensive guy, but more specifically the guys that we had on defense, it was like, okay, listen, like, if we're going to lose this game, we're going to make every single dude that gets to the ball or catches the ball or runs the ball pay the price. And we just had a characteristic about our defense and a physical mentality that, like, I don't think was really seen in our league at that time. I think, at the time, VI had some really good defensive players for sure. No doubt they had some really good D linemen. They had some really good DBs through the years, and that was never a question. But I think more specifically what made that rivalry such a great one was our defense was highly, highly touted with a lot of really, like, well-known and respected defenders and guys that were all-stars and all Canadians and all of that. And on the other side of the rivalry was that offense that was so high-powered, Jordan Yance and Whitman Tamuziak and Jordan Bottle and all those guys that were really well-known and well-respected offensive players. So you got to get this, like, the best of the best on both sides of the ball type mentality. And it was like, all right, who's going to blink first? Who's going to make a mistake first? And I think that's what made it fun, man. I think the other part of it too is, for me, my game wasn't about just talking trash. My game was about playing hard and playing physical. My game was also about letting you know, if you think you're better than me, you're going to have to prove it. I don't mind guys saying that they're this or that, but you're going to have to prove it. I'm going to try and break you. Like, I'm going to try and break your will and make sure that you are who you say you are. And if you are, I'll get up and shake your hand. Like, and, it's funny, I laugh because, we talk about Robin Medeiros. Robin Medeiros, I'll never forget, we played you guys, or played VI more specifically in, like, I think it was a 2010 semifinal. It might have been the semifinal, or it might have even been the Cullen. And I was, like, in the slot, and Robin came running down, like, in his waggle, and he cut me. Like, he got me, and I kind of barely saw it out of the side of my eye. He cut me and, like, hit me in my thigh, gave me a nice, like, Charlie horse. I was like, all right, cool. And I remember just getting up and, like, clapping in his face, being like, now you're a marked man. And then it was like the very next play goes away from him. He's running down the field, and I just hit him, like, as hard as I could. But it was like, that was the type of, like, as much as it was, like, on the borderline of, like, almost out of control, it was still like a mutual respect that, like, hey, I'm going to give you everything I got. I expect you to give me everything you got, and let's see how this goes. And, I think the other part too is the coaching staffs, man. I think the coaching staffs had that mutual respect for each other, but there was also a natural hate of, like, all right, you guys are the benchmark and we want to take your title. And that was all it was for my entire time that I was there, through all the years, through all the off seasons, through all the training camps, through all the regular season games. Like, it was about proving that we're the next VI, you know what I mean? And that was what it was. And, obviously it didn't go that way. Obviously it took a long time to get there. Obviously the 2012 season was a good chance at redemption and being able to change that narrative. But I would say for the better part of 3 or 4 years, like, we were always going to be the runner up to VI. And we always knew VI was going to be in the national championship, or at least close to the national championship. And that's what it was. So for us, it was a healthy rivalry. I think there were some times where it kind of got a little bit, it blurred the line. But at the same time, I think that's why those groups of players, both on our side and on, VI side, became friends and became close and, connected, or stayed connected after football was, done for all of us.
My last junior question for you, Jordan. You beat VI in the Cullen Cup. You end up punching your ticket to the national championship, up against the benchmark of the CJFL in the Saskatchewan Hilltops. I believe they were on their crazy run of like 7-12 or something like that. Their 16th national championship. I believe that was their third straight or something like that. Kind of just take us through that game, what that experience was like for you to play in a national championship, junior national championship, against the Saskatoon Hilltops, the benchmark of junior football.
Yeah, I mean, that was, like as much as I was sitting here saying, we were excited to be able to have the opportunity to host a national championship. We went from one perennial powerhouse in the VI Raiders to another in the Saskatoon Hilltops. And obviously their resume speaks for itself, and what they've been able to accomplish is obviously unprecedented in junior football and honestly really in football in general. Yeah, man, it was a great game. It was an unreal experience because we were hosting that game at home. So, you had a chance to host a national championship. There's almost 4,000 plus fans there for that game. Great venue, great setting, and playing at McLeod. Tons of people there on the sideline, tons of alumni back for that game. And we knew what it was. We knew what to expect. We had watched tape. We felt good about the week of practice. Everything was going in the right direction. And, the game was tight. The game was close. It was a defensive game through and through on both sides. And it was just kind of one of those things, like, who's going to make the mistake first? And unfortunately, we did. I think we ended up losing 24-21. And it was one of those situations, man, like, you start to look back at the game, you remember like little specific things that maybe weren't even like egregious or big, just little things, guys not, being lined up correctly, guys dropping a ball or whatever. And those things started to compound late in the game. We lose our safety, Carlo Graziano, to a, pretty significant injury. There's some things that just kind of unraveled, but at the end of the day, I think the mentality of that team was like, never say die, to just kind of go to the final whistle. And we battled. We weren't able to kind of, come up with points, kick the field goal late and missed it. And it just, things like that weren't, on that given day going in our favor. So, for me, it was hard. It was heartbreaking. I still remember the moment. I think there's a picture somewhere on the internet with me and like 4 guys or 5 guys. I think it was like 2 guys from my team and 2 guys from the Hilltops, just like saying a prayer after the game, giving thanks for the opportunity to compete. But, at the end of the day, man, like, we lost. We came up short, and no one ever cares or remembers second place. So ultimately we didn't finish what we came back to finish. And I think that group of guys, like, it's funny, I'm friends with a lot of those guys, still see those guys every now and then, still talk to all those guys a lot. It still haunts you. It haunts you because that you were 3 points, 4 points away from making a memory that will never be able to be taken away from you. So unfortunately, we came up short, and hats off to the Hilltops. They went on a crazy run after that. They're still the benchmark for the CJFL. And, it's funny, I had a conversation with Coach Sarge, who's the head coach there, like almost right after the game. And he said, in my whatever, I think they were on like 3 consecutive games, like, that was the toughest game we ever played. And in my 25 years of coaching, that was the most physical game we ever played. So, again, there's little things like that you reflect on. You're like, that's cool. Those are, warm moments, I guess, but they don't mean shit. At the end of the day, we weren't the national championship in 2012. So it is what it is. But as far as the experience itself, it was a great one, and one that I'll definitely remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah, man, it's a whole nother level when you take on the Saskatoon Hilltops, that's for sure. Had my fair share to, be on the Raiders team that went out to Saskatoon and try to dethrone them, and didn't have any luck. And it's I think that's the best thing about junior as well, is the competitiveness of, you come out of the BCFC, and then it's okay, who came out of the Prairies, who came out of Ontario. Probably likely that's going to be the Hilltops, somebody else that you're going to have to go through to actually win a national championship. So just the beautiness, the beautifulness of junior football, and kind of why as well I wanted to have you on, of kind of hearing a few of your stories from your side of things, being on the Raiders side of things, not really being able to hear behind the ropes of your perspective, and kind of hearing some of those are definitely cool, and something I've been looking forward to. So I appreciate you sharing some of those, Jordan.
Sure.
You end up going to the University of Manitoba and becoming, teammates with some of those guys that you had such a big rivalry with. End up taking some of your teammates with. And then obviously coming to the University of Manitoba with the beautiful facilities, the resources, and then obviously Coach Dobie. You mentioned you having the prior relationship with him. I guess my first question would be kind of just, what's your relationship like with Coach Dobie? Could you kind of just maybe tell us a little bit about him? Obviously, he loves his BC guys, always kind of putting his roots down here and making sure that he's pretty busy out here come recruiting season, especially in the BCFC junior football, guys like that. So what's Coach Dobie like? Maybe give him a little bit of kind of, sell him to, maybe some recruits that are watching this kind of stuff, what it would be like playing for him, and kind of your relationship with Coach Dobie.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of stories there to be told, but yeah, no, Coach Dobie, man, I got a lot of love for Coach Dobie. Like I said, he had recruited me pretty steadily and consistently through basically from the time I came back to junior, and even prior, he had recruited me coming out of high school, but more kind of avidly, I guess you call it, when I came back to junior. And the running joke with that was I committed there basically at the end of every season. So 09, 10, 11, and 12 to the University of Manitoba and never showed up. And obviously the main reason being that, we had a good thing going in Langley. That group of guys wanted to stay together. We all work, fielding different scholarship opportunities across the country. And obviously being a national contender every year, you're going to have a little bit more attention and eyes on you as far as recruiters and programs that are looking to try and, get you to sign or commit to them. So, Coach Dobie would always, come and see me. We'd go out for lunch or we'd meet with the fam or whatever. And he was always consistent with his message, with me. This is what we want to do with you. This is what we expect if, you come to our program. This is what we have for you as far as scholarship opportunities. And also, too, more importantly, consistently just being like, hey, man, like, what's going on? How's everything at home? How's everything with football going? Like, he genuinely showed a lot more care than I would say a lot of the other coaches did at that time. But I think our relationship was strong because of the, ability to have those conversations. Hey, coach, I know I committed. I know I verbally committed. I know I came to spring camp or whatever the case may be, but I need one more year. I have something. I have some unfinished business here with the Rams that I want to kind of see through. And he understood. He was compassionate to that, and he understood that when it came down to it, and we didn't know it was going to take all the way to 2012, but when it came down to it, whenever I made my decision to leave and go to university or go back to university, that Manitoba would at least be the strongest consideration before I made that decision. So throughout the years, even post my time there after playing there, myself and Coach Dobie stay in constant contact. He'll call me when he's in BC, to kind of give a snapshot of our relationship. Like, he would come out here to recruit, and like, he'd hit me up and I'd be like, hey, come by the facility, like Game Ready's facility. Or he would give me a call and be like, hey, what are you doing right now? And one time in I think it was 2013 or 2014, he came by my sister's birthday. So he was at one of my youngest sister's birthdays just to hang out for a bit, have some food, and, kind of break bread with the family. But that's the type of dynamic and relationship I had with Coach Dobie. And, even now, fast forward to present day, whenever they're trying to, convince a big time recruit or they're trying to win a recruiting battle against another school, I'm usually one of the first calls that they have to kind of speak to my experience and talk about what the steps are that I took there, and then also what helped me transition to the level that I'm at now. So, that's kind of always been the dynamic and always been the kind of, relationship I've had with Dobie. And, I've always supported him in any ways I can. I've always supported the program in any ways I can. So that's kind of why, Manitoba and Coach Dobie will always have a near and dear spot in my heart, I guess.
Yeah, I think you see that he cares about the student athletes, as human beings. I think you see that firsthand with the Maya Turner. I believe that's, the field goal kicker, giving an opportunity to, a female to kind of break through some barriers and stuff like that, and kind of not really caring about, if there was any ramifications or anything like that, and just kind of being, a human instead of kind of living in a box and kind of trying to be like a robot. So definitely appreciate Coach Dobie, and always just kind of rooting for the Manitoba Bisons ever since kind of the connection of all the VI guys going out there. But take us through the 2014 season. You guys end up, beating the vaunted Calgary Dinos in the Hardy Cup, and becoming the 2014 Hardy Cup champions. What was that season like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, similar to how we kind of finished out our junior career in Langley, and I'm sure with those guys, I know for certain, actually, they said the same thing with how they finished their 2012 season coming out of junior with the Raiders. It was, we all came back early to school. So, we all knew we would only have 2 years of eligibility. Some guys had 3, but majority of us had 2 years of eligibility. So we knew going into our, senior season, it was, hey, we have one shot to go and do exactly what we came here to do, which is trying to win a national championship. The only way we do that is putting the work in and getting here together and trying to build that chemistry and that bond and furthering the brotherhood that we had. So, going into the 2014 season, we all came back. Training camp in U Sport or CIS traditionally starts like the first or second week of August. We all came back like mid-July. we all, whether it was BC or Sask or Ontario, wherever everyone was for the summer break, we all kind of came back early. Spent a lot more time in the weight room together, spent some time on the field doing conditioning, doing a lot of things just to build team camaraderie and also spend time together. And running into that 2014 season, we knew we only had one shot at this. If we don't make it, or we don't find a way to win, if we don't find a way to make it out of the West, there's no one else getting another opportunity. You know what I mean? So I think the drive and the motivation internally in the program at that point was like win at all costs. And I think that's where, being a older group per se, having a bunch of guys that had a bunch of junior experience that were coming into the program at 21, 22, maybe even 23 years old, allowed us to have a little bit more maturity and understanding what it was going to take for us to get to where we wanted to get to. So, the season was up and down. I think we thought we were going to be better than we were to start the year. We had some struggles, but at the same time, when it came down to it, in high pressure situations, in situations where we gave up big plays or we blew leads or whatever, there was no panic. I think it was an understanding that like we have the talent in the building or in the room to be able to compete with anyone across the country. We knew that. I think teams, as the season wore on, started to see that we weren't afraid of anybody. And for us to get a chance to go into Calgary and to win a Hardy Cup, which at that time hadn't been done for a number of years. Calgary had kind of become the constant or the staple for the Can West. Was a big deal. We lost them the year prior in the Hardy Cup in Calgary. So we wanted to come back and get our revenge and have a chance to represent the West on the national stage. So, we went into Calgary, beat Calgary on a cold night. And, even that, to get to that point, we had to go through Sask, played at the University of Saskatchewan in the semifinal, which was not an easy place to win either. So we went there and won there, won the Hardy in Calgary. I had a chance to go and play for the UTEC Bowl in the national semifinal against the University of Montreal. So ultimately, that year, obviously we fell short of a national championship opportunity, but we felt really good about what we were doing and how close we were, and also more importantly that we had a chance to get there. So it was tough to see it end the way it did, especially with that group. But I think at the end of the day, that group knew we had a team that was capable of winning a national championship. Obviously, it didn't go our way, but we felt good about what we did and what we were able to do in that year.
So Jordan, you've been able to kind of be a part and see some really good football up close, professional level, youth sports level, younger level in high school and stuff like that. Going down south and all these 7-on-7 tournaments and all that stuff. Being a professional yourself, coaching the last few years, you coached at SFU as well. Can you kind of maybe speak about the level of play, the competition in youth sports football, and kind of I don't know if you want to say maybe underrated is the right word, or maybe just not watched enough, not put on a platform enough, I guess is maybe the right word. Speak about being an athlete yourself and kind of pitching to people to tune in on Saturdays of maybe they want to watch on Canada West TV or OUA TV and stuff like that. And it's accessible and it's out there for people, but I think people just aren't able to come across because it's not advertised, it's not thrown at your face, like NCAA, like some of those sports down south and stuff like that. But I think it's starting to become more and more with some of these platforms, right? The podcast, the Instagrams, the Showtime Digitals, House of CFLs, all the good stuff that we're kind of creating some content this weekend with the Invitational Combine. Why should people that are Canadian football fans, even just fans in general of football in Canada here, tune into youth sports on Saturday and really give these athletes some of their attention?
Great question. I think a lot of it has to do with understanding that, much like anything, the NCAA or the NFL or just any type of sporting opportunity that you want to watch, it comes from an understanding of if you want to find it, it's there. You know what I mean? And I think on the flip side of that, I think as a country, and I think that even just as different platforms or different leagues, we can do a better job of promoting the student athletes that play in Canada. I think you're starting to now see with this generation in this era of social media and the different platforms, the podcasts, the things that are trying to raise the profile of football in the country, there is more accessibility and there is more opportunity to see those things. But I think we can continue to collectively push it forward. I remember back in the day, like, I don't know if it was Channel 4 or whatever, you could watch Canada West games on TV. Back in the day on
The
Score.
Yeah.
Score had the OUA games. So you would hope that these networks and these different cable platforms or streaming platforms would take the opportunity to kind of at least showcase those, games once a week even. Like, I think there's a lot to be said about the game itself. I think the youth sport or the CIS level football in this country is really good. It's cool that you get to see those, little, opportunities late in the year, whether it's the Yates Cups or the Loney Bowls or the UTEC Bowls or whatever. But it would be cool to see more of a, consistent regular season showcasing of those talents and of those teams, because at the end of the day, like, nothing is going to be lost with the exposure of these programs and exposure of the football being played in this country, but there's so much to gain. You know what I mean? I think if we can showcase that, there's 18 to 22 or 23-year-old, student athletes that are going out every Saturday and putting on for their programs and for their families and for the game of football in this country, it's a win-win for everyone involved. So, I would love to see more opportunities for those games to be televised. I would love to see more opportunities for those games to be streamed on different platforms, because I think at the end of the day, like, nothing is going to ever be showcased without people putting the effort behind it. I think the reason that you're seeing some of that stuff start to come out is because people are taking out, advantage of opportunities like yourself and like Showtime to actually put the spotlight on these players and on these programs. And I think we just got to keep leaning into that and keep building that, because that's what's going to force these, bigger corporate places to take advantage of showing and showcasing these different teams and these different games that are being played, because it's there. You know what I mean? These games have been played for the last 50, 60, 70 years across the country at the youth sport level or the CIS level, and it's just not been showcased the way it's needed to be. You know what I mean? I think if anything, we should be able to go ahead and, make sure that those games in the regular season are televised, and then have different opportunities in the playoffs to be able to showcase those. And the national championship should be televised too. Like, I don't know how those things aren't consistently thought of as, mainstays in the Canadian sports, landscape. So hopefully that there's some people out there that are looking at ways to kind of better showcase the game. But I think we're slowly and gradually getting there.
Definitely slowly getting there for sure. I think it's getting better and better, but we're seeing NFL executives coming to the campus of UBC and stuff like that. So I think if people are going crazy and goo goo gaga down south, I think hopefully in due time that'll be the same up here, and hopefully the more these athletes get spotlighted, the more and more that'll happen. So like you mentioned, kind of 2014, you understood that was kind of your last year of eligibility. Knowing that kind of your professional dreams were probably on the rise, you end up getting an opportunity with Montreal Alouettes 2015. Stick around for, I believe, a season there, but that wasn't your only professional opportunity as well. I believe you kind of dabbled on some practice roster as well back in the day with the Langley Rams, kind of maybe the Andrew Harris rule or whatever, the kind of practicing junior. But you're able to parlay your football career into kind of what a lot of people like to say, using football as a vehicle into other opportunities. And you're a man of many talents. We'll get into a few other things, but more specifically, we've kind of mentioned it a few times. You parlay into this Game Ready Elite. Could you really detail some of our listeners tonight what that is, how that came about, who those some of those guys that kind of in that kind of venture with you? I know some of those guys are kind of like I feel like you're kind of like to my generation, it's gonna be like the OG of the BCFC. I feel like some of those guys that kind of you got together with, maybe some of your kind of older guys, role models that you looked up to. So talk a little bit about Game Ready and what you've built, in the last decade or so here.
Yeah, man. Game Ready itself was a program or an organization that was started by a guy named Will Loftus, who had played 10 years in the CFL. He played a number of years in Edmonton and then played a number of years in Montreal as well, winning a couple of Grey Cups. Game Ready, when I first got involved with the program or the organization, it wasn't even a program. It was I basically, as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid, walked up to Will and some of the guys he was training with at the time. I was 19 and just asked if I could train. I had met him a few years prior, and I had been saying, hey, I'm a football player. I aspire to be a pro football player one day. But our paths ended up crossing again a little bit older. And at 19, I just said, hey man, I'd love to train with you guys. I know you guys are all, currently still playing, but like, I just want to kind of learn from the best and try to find a way to like grow my game and also get better at some of the things I need to get better at, as well as like, doing my part to be in the best, physical shape I can be. And it was a pretty like scary task at the moment, but when I did it, he just turned to me and said, hey man, listen, if you show up every day at this time and you don't miss a workout, no issue. You can be a part of the group. You can train with us. Don't worry about the money. It's all good. Da da da. From that little conversation, we ended up parlaying our relationship into a great, friendship, but also he founded Game Ready Fitness off of that. Game Ready became a program because he was, nearing the end of his career, and he wanted to find a way to continue to like pour into, youth and also be able to give back to the game of football. So, he always joke and say I was the first athlete in Game Ready, but, fast forward a dozen years later, my role in it was, I trained in the program. We were fortunate to get our own facilities eventually, but I trained in the program as an athlete. I did my off seasons, training with those guys that were still playing currently, also, while aspiring to try and get there one day. And then, obviously as I went through my football journey, I decided to kind of come back and, be a coach there, worked in the strength and conditioning aspect of the business, also did some programs and some of the at-risk programs as well, just try to be like as much involved as I could within, obviously the times that I had free to do so. And and then, fast forward to, the creation of the Game Ready Elite program. The Game Ready Elite program was just an idea I had. I was sitting there and saying, we need to find a way to create more opportunities and more exposure for these guys, whether it's here or down south, but also making sure that we really kind of focus on skill development. I felt like the coaching or the quality of coaching across the province was kind of dwindling. So I wanted to find a way to put together like a program where we had some of the top tier coaches come together and just continue to give back to the kids that we had in our program. So, myself and another good friend of mine, a guy named G. Simon, which I'm sure a lot of the listeners know who that is. We sat down and we were just, talking one day, and I said, listen, this is what I want to do. The goal is to do it with some coaches that have a wealth of experience. I know you're one of those guys. I know Will's one of those guys. I know that, there's a couple other guys that we were all part of our friend circle that I wanted to, kind of enlist to do this with me. So, 2016, 2015, really the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, we started the Game Ready Elite program, initially with wanting to only have CFL coaches or CFL players, former players, current players come back and be the coaches for the said program. So, myself, G-Roy, Will Loftus, Paris Jackson, and J.R. LaRose were the coaches for the program. And what we did was we just basically tried to create a platform to really like teach, receiver, DB, linebacker, running back, quarterback play in a competitive setting. And then from there, we wanted to make sure that we were taking ourselves wherever we needed to take ourselves, whether it was down south, across the country, wherever it may be, to compete against the best caliber competition. So we started that program, and, fast forward to present day, we're 8 years in. We went through, I think I just looked recently, I think we're at like 57 or 60, players that have went on to have university scholarships across U Sport, D1, D2, D3, and NAIA. We have a handful of players that have went the JUCO route as well, but all have obtain scholarship opportunities. So, that's something that we hang our hat on, something we're proud of. And more importantly for me as an individual, it comes back to the things I said earlier in this conversation. Like, I just want to continue to build the game and the profile of the game in our community, man. Like, at the end of the day, as a guy from BC, like, the more BC boys I can go and help, get on to the next level, I'm going to do that. Whether that's here, whether that's Nanaimo, whether that's Kelowna, I don't care. Like, I want to see these guys go on, and if they have the talent and the ability to obtain a scholarship opportunity and set themselves up for life during football and after, I'm going to do that any way I can. So that's really what kind of spurred the whole desire to start the Game Ready Elite program. And, now we fast forward, we've had up to as many as 5 teams or 6 teams in a season. This year we're only carrying 3, but, every year we try to have as many touch points from basically U12 to U18 age groups of teams that are competitive, and they're essentially travel teams. So we take them down south and play predominantly, if not exclusively, U.S. schedule. We've been to Vegas, we've been to Arizona, we've been to L.A., we've been to Washington State. We treat Washington State like it's an extension of BC. So, we say we play home tournaments. We're basically saying we play in Washington. So, again, it's just trying to create opportunities, man. It's continuously trying to show ways of getting more kids playing football and also just continue to work on skill development.
Yeah, man. The cool thing for me is, I feel like it's one thing if you create an organization, and this is no slight if this were the case, but for Canadian athletes and kind of I feel like the narrative is maybe we can't compete or we're not as good as kids down south, or kind of maybe that's a lazy narrative, right? But you guys, I feel like kind of competed right off the get go and have made a name for yourselves kind of right away. You guys have you're posting a lot of your results on Instagram and stuff like that for the public to see, and you guys are winning a lot of tournaments, placing high in a lot of these tournaments. Speak about that and kind of how cool that is for you guys as well. Maybe for yourself, being a younger man as well, but not being able to have something like that when you were a young man, right? And being able to do it at the coach level now, and being able to kind of, be proud of some of your younger athletes that, we're competing with some of these Americans and showing that we're just as skillful, just as good as, some of these guys down south.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think, man, that's a big part of it. I think for me, I find a lot of joy in just seeing our guys compete, man. I see our guys excited about making big plays. I like the fact that our kids enjoy just any situation where they have to go into a hostile environment and compete. So, for me, a lot of the time, early on in our program, it was about just going out there and showing that we're just as capable. We have just as much talent. Is it as dense? Is there as many players per team that we have that are the same caliber as the best teams down there? Maybe not. But for every 10 guys that they have that are superstars or big names or 5 stars or 4-star recruits or whatever, we have 1 or 2 as well. And I think that more importantly, I think the best part of what we've been able to do is showcase our kids, but also instill in our kids that the gap between you and the player that you're watching on Instagram or that you're watching on TV isn't as big as you think. They're looking at opportunities because that's what's presented to them. You're chasing opportunities because there isn't as many given to you. So for us, the biggest thing we try to do in our program is just say, listen, if you showcase on these certain platforms or circuits your ability, it's another tool in the process for you to get the evaluation you deserve so that you may get a scholarship opportunity. You know what I mean? If you go down there and you're competing against a guy that's highly touted, highly recruited, and he's got a name and a following, well, now those same evaluators are watching him, are going to go and try and do some research on you. And by no means am I sitting here saying that 7-on-7 is the end all be all to getting recruited or to getting a D1 scholarship, but it definitely is another tool in the process to, again, showcase our kids in ways that they probably wouldn't get showcased up here. And I think outside of that, the other side of it for me is I know that there's a lot of attention and notoriety that's come to our program from what we've been able to do on the circuit. We've been a mainstay in the circuit for the 8 years that we've been in it. We jumped into the mix year 1, not knowing what we were doing, wearing, mismatched jerseys and whatever, and went straight to Vegas for our first actual tournament. And it was like, hey, I don't even really fully know the rules, but this is what we're doing.
Jumping into the deep end.
Yeah, exactly. It's sink or swim. And, we jumped in the deep end. And honestly, I think that sent our program on a trajectory that, was probably expedited a little bit faster than it should have been. But in saying that, it's been able to kind of been a thing where now, we have a reputation and a resume that in the Pacific Northwest, more specifically like Washington and Oregon, teams know who we are. When we show up, they know where that gold jersey comes from. They know where the Canadian flag on the back originated from, like all of those things, and that's something that we've, been proud to build. And now as we move, into the latter part of the first decade of this program, we want to make sure that that continues to be the norm. We want to continue to expand. We want to continue to build a platform and opportunities and, Lord willing, a bigger and better program every year. But that's where we're at as an organization of hey, this isn't about us. It's about the kids. But if the kids get the opportunities they deserve, then it looks great on the organization too. And that's where it's a little bit of synergy and a little bit of opportunity kind of for our program to continue to grow.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, hat tip to you guys and the rest of the organization. You guys have, been trailblazing and kind of killing this new trend of kind of skill development, I feel like, up here in Canada. So just excited to watch what you guys are going to do here in the near future. So talking about, your many talents and kind of using, football as a vehicle, I really wanted to kind of hear about your perspective of, the Madden thing and kind of, I'm sure you've been asked about this a few times, and how that came about. And I feel like that's probably a pretty cool thing that, every year, if you're a football fan, you look forward to the Madden release date and stuff like that, and the EA Sports, I'm in the game, all that sort of stuff. How cool is it for you to kind of be behind the scenes and all that sort of stuff of the video game?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been surreal. Yeah, I guess probably about the same amount of time. 2016 was my first year being a part of any of the Madden projects. I've been extremely fortunate, man, extremely blessed to have opportunities been afforded to me because of my time playing football. And I tell our guys all that, especially my younger guys and even guys that I coach at the CFL level, like, use this game to your advantage. Leverage your name and your opportunities that you have playing this game to opportunities outside of football, because you just never know. For me, I had no idea. I was almost naive to the fact that, EA even had a headquarters here in Vancouver. When the opportunity presented itself, I kind of dismissed it, thinking I was better than the opportunity. Excuse me. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be a part of the game. Everyone that ever played football wants to be a part of the game, but I just kind of wasn't thinking that the opportunity itself would be what it became. Fast forward to present day, I've had, have had the ability to be a part of 8 projects, working on 9 right now. And, been fortunate and able to be a part of college football. And so that's where, for me, the opportunity to be a part of the EA family, a part of the Third and One family, a part of Madden as a franchise, has been great, man. I've gotten to do so many cool things and unique things within the game. The experience in terms of the relationships I've built, and also getting to be a part of, certain releases, certain aspects that are unique to each year, doing different game modes, doing different stuff in the motion capture aspect. So, for me, if you would have asked me, in 2015 or before I got involved, I would have been like, that'll never happen. That's for some actor or some NFL player. But, I've been fortunate to be a part of the project. And I've been able to be a mainstay in the project. That's not very common, even in the motion capture world. Like, usually you get 1 or 2 opportunities to shoot and then you're done. I've been fortunate, aside from when I'm, in season, I've been a part of every shoot that's happened since 2016. And, also outside of that, just even getting to rub elbows with some of the guys that I looked up to in football through the game, it's been cool. And, for me, the younger me, I was a big college NCAA football guy growing up playing video games, and to be able to work on college football in the, revitalization of that project has been like, I kind of laugh. I'm like, man, if you would have told me this, I'd have told you I don't think you're mentally well. Like, there's just no way that I'm going to be involved in NCAA or college football. But, I've been fortunate to be able to do that as well. And that's where, being a part of the video game is cool. But I think it's more the opportunity to say that, hey, like, I got to put something in that game that will forever be in the game. You know what I mean? And that's where, I'm fortunate. And like you said, it's just being able to use the vehicle of football to get to these opportunities.
Yeah, man, it's crazy what that brown leather ball could do for you, the places it'll take you. Just super cool, and why I feel like you, me, people that are watching tonight probably love the game so much, and everything it's able to do for people that love the game so much. Because I feel like when you put stuff into it, it'll give back to you in tenfold. So, very cool experience, and something cool for a BC kid to watch. Kind of like you said, not even thinking that something like that is attainable, not thinking like an EA Sports headquarters is in little old Vancouver, not even little old Vancouver. I guess that's something that's big old Vancouver, I should say, coming from the island. But just super cool. But getting back on the football, lastly here before we get out of here, Jordan, appreciate you giving me some of your time, like I mentioned. Coaching, where did that come from? Obviously, you kind of got back into coaching with the Game Ready, all that stuff. I believe you spent some time Langley Rams, SFU, and then I believe you kind of dipped your toe in the professional ranks with the BC Lions. I want to say before COVID. But where did kind of that itch come for the professional ranks?
Yeah, I mean, again, similar to kind of some of the other stories we've talked about tonight, like I didn't really come looking for football in the sense of like trying to join the coaching world. When I was done playing in 16, I went to mini camp in 16, and I was kind of at peace with just being like, hey, it's cool here to pivot and do something else. Football had consumed so much of my life. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to just, even have the freedom to travel. Wanted to do some stuff in the stunt world and TV world that I had opportunities to do. other things, just in general, man. Even spending time back home in Vancouver and having that stability and the consistency of being back home for less than or for more than, I guess, like 3 or 4 months at a time. So 2016, same kind of thing. I was home after getting released, and some of my former coaches from my time with the Rams had asked, hey, like, are you willing to come out and help for spring camp? I was like, 3 days, sure, I'll come out, kind of give back to my alumni or my alma mater, and then we'll kind of call it good from there. So I did that, and then got through spring ball, and I'm home chilling, and they're like, hey man, like, do you mind coming in and just helping out for like a day or two during training camp? I was like, sure, go out there, help for like a day or two. And then like mid training camp, they're like, hey man, like, we don't have a whole bunch of money, but we can pay you this much money. Would you mind being our DB coach for the year? I was like, sure, with 1 year, not going to kill me. It'd be good to get my roots kind of planted back here in Vancouver and kind of giving back to the organization that given so much to me. So I did that. Fast forward, that ended up being a 2-year thing. Decided to leave there. Was completely okay with taking some time away from football again for the second time, or what I thought would be the second time. And then someone, I guess, had talked to Coach Ford, Thomas Ford, who became the head coach at SFU, and said that, if you're going to do any recruiting in Vancouver or BC, you need this kid on your staff. You need to know this kid. He's well, respected and well connected in the community. And so, blindly, he reached out to me. He's like, hey, man, I would just love to come, chop it up with you for like 30 minutes and just see where you're at and kind of pick your brain on some things and kind of get a lay of the land for how to recruit BC guys and things like that. So he pulled up on me at the Game Ready facility, and we sat down and talked. It was supposed to be 30 minutes, ended up being almost 3 hours. And he just said, I need you on my staff. He's like, I don't know where you're going to coach or what you're going to coach. I don't even know if you're going to coach for me, but I just need you on my staff in some capacity. He's like, I'll make sure, you're taken care of, and we'll figure out what the pay looks like and things like that. But I just know I need you on my staff, your energy, your insight, all those things. So, I kind of took a risk and said, all right, you know what? I said I wasn't going to coach this year, but, it was what it was. That was 2018. And I started coaching at the beginning of 2018 or going into 2018. Was there until 2021, and again, enjoyed my time there. Got to do a lot of different things. I was a recruiting coordinator. I was DB coach. I was a linebacker coach. I helped with special teams. I wore multiple hats, as do most coaches at the Division II level. And then, decided to step away from there in the end of 21. And was again okay with just taking a break from football and wanting to do some other things and pivot and just explore other adventures in life. But Coach Jones and Giro had called me with an opportunity to join their staff in Edmonton, and it was a unique one because it was me moving to offense to coach running backs, and something I hadn't been doing. And I had played receiver and played offense all through high school. Went to university, was recruited by certain universities as an offensive player. But outside of that, I was pretty limited in my experience of, high level offensive play and high level, play calling and scheme and things like that. But I kind of bet on myself as a young coach and was like, you know what, it's a cool opportunity to get my foot in the door. It's a cool opportunity to coach at the highest level in this country. And more importantly, opportunity to go and see if I can really do it to the level I think I can. So I took a chance, went to Edmonton, had 2 great years there. Obviously, our record wasn't what it needed to be, but I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the game. I also understood what it took to coach at this level. And then, this year, I had opportunity to return to Edmonton, but a unique opportunity presented itself to join one of my best friends' staffs in Corey Mason, head to Saskatchewan, to a place that, they bleed green, and football is the most important thing in the world. So I took advantage of that opportunity, and here I am. I'm now coaching in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, man. So you just mentioned, that's what I wanted to ask you about, the place in Canada that they care about football the most. How excited are you to coach in a place that, Ryder Green is definitely country known, but I feel like worldwide known too. You always feel that you see that random fan with Ryder gear on, representing the CFL in a good way, but just a hotbed of football in the prairies, in Sask in general. How excited are you to, beautiful stadium, one of the probably, I know IG is probably up there, especially being biased, maybe playing your university ball in there.
Yeah.
One of the nicest stadiums in Canada, in North America, you could maybe even say. But how excited are you to, coach in that atmosphere of a community that, breathes, lives and breathes, dies football, especially Canadian football, and they're proud of it?
Yeah, I mean, as an opponent or as a visitor, you know what you're walking into when you go into Mosaic. Even as a player, in my time as a player, you got to experience that, But I think being on this side of it has been unreal. Obviously we haven't got there for the season yet, but we were there for a 10-day coaches retreat, and just to see the love and appreciation we got from the organization was first class. The facilities are unbelievable, even better than what I thought they were as a visitor. Definitely like the standard or the benchmark for the CFL as a whole. Obviously, being in other stadiums, I can say that. And yeah, you're right. I'm a little biased. I thought IGF was a great facility, but it's definitely not what Mosaic is. Everything about Mosaic flows in a way that like makes you want to be the best coach you can be, the best person you can be, the best player you can be. So I'm fortunate to work where I work. And as far as the fan base, man, you said it. I was actually just in Vegas with our 7-on-7 team early this month, and we're driving to Mesquite, which is about an hour and a half outside of Vegas. And literally, we're driving back from like an early morning game. We had like an 8 a.m. game, and everyone's a little tired and a little groggy. And I look and I'm like, I'm driving the van, and I'm like, hey man, like, is that what I think it is? And so I nudged one of the coaches that's in the passenger. I was like, take a picture of that license plate. And takes a picture. Sure enough, it's like Saskatchewan Roughriders fan license plate. And the car beside him was another fan, and it had a decal on the side that said it was like SK fan, and then it was a big Riders logo. And like this is, I mean, we're in the middle of the desert. There's nothing around, and it just again speaks to the diehard fan base, the religion that is football in the in the province of Saskatchewan and the prairies as a whole. And more importantly, man, like I think that the biggest thing is they want to see their program or their organization succeed. And everyone, whether it's a janitor or the gas station attendant or just a fan, like they were willing to do whatever it is they can do to help that organization win. So I feel like we owe it to them to try and bring back the winning ways and trying to, bring a Grey Cup home sometime over the time that we're there.
Yeah, man. So last question before we get out of here. How excited are you, or how looking forward are you for the challenge of this year? New place, new team. Trevor Harris coming back to lead the team. Like you mentioned, Corey Mace coming over from Toronto. So a new regime kind of taking over the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Some expectations. You guys are quite busy in free agency. Obviously, a big name like AJ Ouellette coming over. Some other big names. On the offensive line, stuff like that. How looking forward to you personally are of a challenge of kind of being a coach in a new place, and then as well of kind of the new challenge of this new era of Saskatchewan Riders football?
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I think we all are. I think there was a mixed reaction or mixed feelings about the staff that we assembled when we decided to all head to Saskatchewan, but I think a lot of that stems from the fact that it's a younger regime, a younger staff, but with a staff that's got a plethora of experience, man. Obviously Coach Mason and Coach Bell coming over from Toronto, and what they were able to do there as a defense, setting some records as a defense in their time in Toronto, winning a Grey Cup. Coach Mueller coming over from Calgary and his pedigree and his time in Calgary and what they were able to accomplish. And, Coach Phil, our D-line coach, having won a Super Bowl as an assistant coach in Philly. Like, there's just a lot of pedigree and a lot of, winning ways that are being brought into the organization. And then for me, like, I'm excited for the challenge to just compete and also to continue to learn. Still a relatively young coach in this game, relatively young in the relativity to what the CFL has always had as a standard for coaches. Used to be, a lot older coaches that were kind of in my position. And now, you fast forward 3 years, the last 3 years for me, I've had my own room for 2 years, and now I have an opportunity where I don't have a room, but I get to learn from a lot of great coaches, JC Sherritt, like I said, Coach Phil, Josh Bell, Corey Mace, those guys. I'm excited for the opportunity. I'm excited for the challenge. It's going to be, it's not going to be an easy one, but at the same time, we're all very similar and like-minded in the sense that we know what we're here for. We're here to return SAS to the glory days. We're here to put the best product on the field. We're here to get the most out of our players. We're here to compete, and we're here to raise the profile of this organization and the CFL as a whole. I think we're going to do that. I think we talked about in our meetings, we're not afraid to say Grey Cup. We're not afraid to go and say year one, that is the target. It's not hey man, we'll be good in 3 years. We got growing pains that we got to get through, and we're all new together, and we're not making excuses. The goal is to win a Grey Cup. The goal for us, and maybe it's even more incentivized from guys like me and for like Coach Mace as well, both being BC guys. But the goal is to end up in Vancouver in the end of November. That's it. The expectations in the building will be the same. The message will be the same. And more importantly, the work that we're going to put in as a staff is going to be the same. We're not going to sit here and wait and be like, we can do this differently or this better. Like, is there going to be some learning curves? For sure. Coach Mace is a first-time head coach, but at the end of the day, the guys around him that he'll lean on are very, very adamant about making sure that we do right by him and making sure that he bet on us and try to help us advance our careers. We owe it to him to do right by him and lead this team each day, in every way to get to where we need to get to, whether that's winning the West, whether that's winning a game, whatever that may be. Like, we're going to do what's necessary to bring this program back to where it needs to be. And more importantly, to bring that big, shiny silver trophy back to Saskatchewan.
Very, very well said, Jordan. Thank you, man, so much for joining me on the episode tonight. Had a lot of fun going behind the scenes of some of my younger fandom of the BCFC, hearing about your time going to Manitoba as well, and then just hearing about your journey. Kind of why I started the podcast, kind of want to spotlight more athletes and kind of more Canadian football players specifically and kind of their journeys, and just hearing a little bit more and not playing the game anymore. I'm, kind of this is my filler and kind of how I'm able to stay in the game and stay involved and kind of just treating this like, we're at the back of the bus shooting the shit and talking like, we're just teammates. We're before practice, that kind of thing. So I enjoy you giving me some of your time. Wishing you well the rest of the off season. I'm hopefully you're able to have a nice relaxing few weeks before it all gets busy. I'm sure you'll be attending, I'm sure, the National Combine here in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm actually, I was supposed to be, and then I'm not now. But I'll be there via Zoom just through like our player interviews and things like that. I was originally going to be there. 7-on-7 stuff was going on. Now I'm not, but I may still make a sudden appearance. But the combine, I won't be there right now as it is. But our staff will be there. Coach Mace will be there. Jeremy O'Day, Kyle Carson, our assistant GM, and then JC Sherritt will be there as well.
Great to hear. Well, Jordan, wishing you a relaxing rest of the off season. Wishing you guys luck this upcoming season. The CFL fan in me is wishing you guys the best of luck. Lions fan in me, not luck when you guys see BC, obviously, but rooting for, obviously, guys that have the BC connection, rooting for yourself, being a fan of yours and everything you're doing for the game. So like I mentioned, man, really appreciate you giving me some of your time tonight. Hearing about your story was very, very cool. Anybody tuning in tonight that enjoyed the episode, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff on YouTube. Head over to the Apple Podcast channels, follow, rate, review, download the podcast episodes would be greatly appreciated, as well as we are on Instagram, folks, at Canadian Football Fanatics, no spaces. Find us over there on Instagram. Give us a follow. All that support is greatly appreciated. Episode 30 over. Like I mentioned, folks, all the support is greatly appreciated, and we will catch you guys in the next episode of the Canadian Football Fanatics.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Awesome, George.